Hey beautiful human, it's RidersDX and I just gotta say, today is going to be a gorgeous day. And it's not because it's gorgeous outside, because there's actually like a car crash outside because the weather was basically like, who am I gonna kill today? No, today's gonna be gorgeous because we're going to inject so much positivity into this room that you will immediately go into hyperglycemia. But it's only life-threatening to most people, so we'll be okay. You see humans, I'm a Sonic fan. But being a Sonic fan isn't all sunshines and rainbows. Actually, it almost never is. Yes, being a Sonic fan is sometimes being like enlisted in the army just because of the amount of discourse that just gets synthesized over something like the color of his eyes. But I want this video to bring us nothing but happiness and joy, which is why we're going to talk about Sonic's most loved video games of all time.
Oh, I don't think so.
Oh, hey Metal Duckles, what brings you on site? You're supposed to stay home so that you can stay safe.
You buffoon! Your human viruses could never make a dent in my exterior. I just choose to keep my distance and spend as little time with the help as possible.
Aww, I love you too.
Why I'm actually here is to inform you that your video has been rejected.
Wait, what? Rejected?
You haven't looked over those meeting minutes, have you?
It kinda got misplaced.
As the overlord overseeing your channel, you must seek approval for every video topic you pursue, and your most loved Sonic games pitch is denied.
But why?
No one watches videos on YouTube for positive content. It's all about the critiques, the rants, the overwhelming waves of negativity that drench our minds in toxic tendencies.
You sure you're not just stuck in the early 2010s?
But not to worry. I have adjusted your idea to something much more suitable and profitable.
Well, me. So due to a minor disagreement with my overlord, instead we're going to talk about the most hated Sonic games of all time. In fact, we're going to do 15 games because, well, there's just so many to talk about. We'll be traveling through the ugliest cornerstones of Sonic's library and... you know what? Let's not judge prematurely. Maybe there will be some hidden gems in here that are just simply misunderstood. You never know. Coming in at number 15, we've got Sonic Forces with a Metacritic score of 58. Not a complete surprise seeing this make the list considering its reception within the fanbase itself. Many critics found the overall experience to be underwhelming, with many comparing it unfavorably to Sonic Mania. Sonic Forces is a disappointing step back for the franchise. Uninteresting level design and subpar gameplay on all three playable characters make for a game that can be frustrating to get through. The nonsense story is poorly written and makes more tonal shifts than Mariah Carey with an ice cube down her back. The game is perfectly fine for the younger audience it's targeting, and we're sure to enjoy it for what it is, but in the wake of Sonic Mania's tremendous success, the problems 3D Sonic has always faced are becoming much harder to ignore. Push square, 4 out of 10. Sonic Forces doesn't ever reach the lowest lows the series has gone through in the past, yet it also has almost nothing in it that leaves a lasting impression. It's the kind of game you can breeze through in an afternoon and then forget about immediately after. The customization in Forces is appreciated, but it's nowhere near enough in a game that lacks great ideas. Easy allies, 5 out of 10. Sonic Forces is a disappointing rehash of everything that has been done wrong in the Sonic franchise in the past. There were some good ideas here, but none of them were executed in a way that was fun or enjoyable. Game Crate, 5.8 out of 10. Some critics still found some fun to be had of the game despite its shortcomings. What ends up holding Sonic Forces back is that it, ironically, moves too fast to leave any sort of lasting impact, speeding through both its plot and levels in short bursts instead of leaving more time for anything to soak in. Outside of its length issues, however, the gameplay is solid, the character customization is incredibly fun, and the aesthetics are impressive as always. Hardcore Gamers, 7 out of 10. Sonic Forces is a confident game, serving up a story and stages that go for broke while dodging the pitfalls of the past. As long as you're not a hardline 3D Sonic hater, this earnest, entertaining adventure is worth a spin. WCCF Tech, 8 out of 10. Sonic Forces is passionate, strong, and fast. Very fast. However, it has notorious design problems that we've seen in previous Sonic games. That said, the game is visually charming, musically vibrant, and brings real hope to fans for seeing the revival of Sonic in the future. 3D Wagos, 7 out of 10. I think the critics actually sum it up pretty well. Sonic Forces is not inherently a bad game, as it has some solid mechanics carried over from the previous 3D titles and is well put together package. but there just isn't anything out of this world amazing about the game that helps it stack up to Sonic's previous adventures. It literally flashes by you within a moment's notice, almost as if you were watching a movie rather than playing a game. It really had potential to be a grand adventure, especially given its scenario, but it does just about everything it can to drag the excitement out of the game until it's just forgettable all around. If there's anything I'd love to see return from this game though, the custom character is an awesome idea and I'd love to see more Sonic games make use of them. They don't necessarily have to be as big of a part of the game as they were here, but even having the option to create your own character and play their own missions with them would be a great way to engage fans, especially the many ones of OCs. And number 14 is none other than Sonic Unleashed with a Metacritic score of 57. As beloved of a game as this can be within the Sonic community, the general public had very mixed opinions on this title. Coming off of Sonic 06, many critics just saw similar shortcomings in terms of controls and gameplay, and many were also not fond of Hedgehog's inclusion. Terrible level design, unresponsive controls, and a poor camera are just the beginning of the problems in this awful adventure. GameSpot 3.5 out of 10. They tossed in one of the dumbest twists in the history of gaming. A Hedgehog? Really? Stretchy arms? Did anyone actually believe this was going to be fun? Gone are any elements of speed, replaced with mindless and poorly designed brawling segments with some terrible platforming sections. IGN 4.5 out of 10. Sonic Unleashed had promise, and actually part of the game is pretty decent, but it's too bad the entire game wasn't complete with the mindset of Days Sonic. Sorry Sonic, gamers pass on this one. Extreme Gamer 4.5 out of 10. Some critics received the game more positively despite not loving the entirety of the game. To be quite frank, Sonic Unleashed is half great game and half unnecessarily unleashed. The Sonic levels are extremely fun and bring back the memories of yesteryear, and the nighttime levels will leave players wondering why Sonic Team continues to torture their fans by continuing to add pointless things to prolong good gameplay. Game 2.0, 7.7 out of 10. Despite the game's clumsy story progression and repetitive Hedgehog combat, it manages to be the best Sonic game released in recent memory. This is thanks mostly to the excellent Hedgehog levels that evoke memories of classic Sonic titles while still managing to feel fresh and new. Cheat Code Central 7.2 out of 10. I appreciate Team Sonic's effort to mix the old with the new, and there's definitely some potential in the alter ego mechanic. Unfortunately, they don't blend especially well in Unleashed, an experience that had me alternately stoked to get to the next traditional level and a bit disappointed every time the sun went down. Team Xbox 7 out of 10. Despite the wide-ranging scores, it seems the majority of critics had roughly the same opinion. Daytime stages were a blast, while Hedgehog levels were a drag. Where the variation comes in is how much the daytime levels elevated the game in comparison. Looking back on it, I personally enjoyed Sonic Unleashed very much and think the Hedgehog is actually well built in its mechanics, but it really had no place in not just being in a Sonic game, but taking up such a large portion of it. It's just a complete pace breaker from the daytime levels. It's like they took the mech levels and just eliminated any sense of speed those levels had. Granted, you could speed through the levels, but then you'd miss all the damn sun and moon medals, which is a whole nother can of worms. It's too bad because this game nails so many things like its story, graphics, sound, and the sheer amount of side content. It's a high budget Sonic game we haven't seen for quite some time. I get why the game is here, but hopefully Sega doesn't think the game is all bad, as it's got a lot of shining qualities to it I definitely want to see return. Coming in at a heartbreaking number 13, Sonic Riders, the most misunderstood racing game of all time. Sorry, let me remove myself from the conversation for like 10 seconds. It has a Metacritic score of 56.67, and I guess many critics absolutely slammed the controls of the game, with tons of them just not being able to make sense of how the game worked. Idiots, am I right? Racing games are supposed to be games of skill, not chance. Sonic Riders, despite all of its shortcuts and power-up items, feels like a game of chance. What's more, it's also real pain to play. PSX Gamer 4.8 out of 10. You never really feel like you're controlling the racers, but rather just making suggestions that they follow or ignore at their leisure. Official US PlayStation Magazine 4 out of 10. But this isn't so much a racing game as a slapdash splash of smeared color that never quite captures the feeling of hurtling down a track. Computer Games Magazine 2 out of 10. Others were still able to find fun in the game despite its complex mechanics. I swung back and forth so many times on Riders gameplay that I nearly had an emotional breakdown. The game can seem impossibly difficult until you learn all the shortcuts and master every turn. If that's your cup of tea, get all over it. If not, rent it. Total PlayStation 8 out of 10. Sonic Riders is packed with mostly quirky nuances that take time and a little frustration to master, often resulting in races being determined by track memorization as much as mastery of your particular race's strengths and weaknesses as they pertain to each wild ride. Play Magazine 7 out of 10. Sonic Riders can occasionally be quite entertaining, but too many of those entertaining moments are overridden by bouts of frustration and weak mechanics. GameSpot 6.6 out of 10. Okay, now that is out of the way, Sonic Riders is my favorite racer of all time. but I totally understand why it wasn't received well. The game can be fun if you master mechanics, but to do that, a lot of trial and error along with time needs to be dedicated. And unfortunately, that's too much to expect for any person playing this game. Racing games especially depend on players being able to easily jump into the action. After all, it is advertised as a multiplayer activity to do with friends at gatherings and such. So if your game takes far too long to learn the controls of it, it defeats the purpose of its existence and as a result will deter many people from playing it again. But if you are willing to work through the game's ridiculous lack of direction, the payout is so great and is honestly my favorite racing experience of all time. I'm happy to see the game still has a somewhat active community online, with it being updated with online capabilities to support tournaments and such. And I suppose that's enough for this buried treasure. I guess siblings always stick close together, as Sonic Riders Zero Gravity is at number 12 with a Metacritic score of 56. A lot of critics brought over their comments on the series controls, along with other detriments to the game. Dodgy controls aside, there's little inherently wrong with Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, yet it's painfully average and just lacks the amount of fun that would warrant a purchase. Ace Games, 4 out of 10. The controls, namely character acceleration, feel awkward and counterintuitive. For instance, you're forced to hold forward on the left stick to accelerate while also trying to steer your character. The tracks are a mishmash of right angle turns and jumps that sometimes lead you down random paths, requiring several runs just to find your way around the track. 1 up, 4.5 out of 10. The racing has been so simplified that it may find a larger audience than the original did. It's not for me though. I like the technique and speed in my racing games, unless we're talking something like Outrun 2, and even that has a drifting mechanism that makes a modicum of sense. Worth playing, 5 out of 10. Even critics that were more positive about the game couldn't help but point out its shortcomings. A surprisingly fun effort, but it's just not as solid as it should be, the controls in particular, and the overly complex mechanics might put the more casual Sonic fans off. Official Nintendo Magazine UK, 7.2 out of 10. Sonic Riders Zero Gravity has some good ideas, but it ultimately falls flat in its execution. The controls are stiff and unresponsive, the track concepts are great, but lack quality design, and the context-sensitive shortcuts feel like a waste of time that do nothing but overcomplicate things, littering the track with garbage. Nintendo, 6 out of 10. Sonic Riders Zero Gravity's problems keep it from being a consistent blast, but it has its moments. Game Almighty, 6 out of 10. So I may personally be a sucker for the original Riders, but unfortunately I can't say the same for Zero Gravity. This game is a classic example of Sonic Team listening too much to feedback about the previous title and creating something that doesn't appeal to anyone. The game's mechanics are overhauled with a simple gravity mechanic which sounds cool on paper, but in reality took out the fun and strategy that was apparent in the original game. They didn't have to completely change things up, just put in a decent tutorial system to help people get into the original game and maybe simplify certain aspects of it. But that's Sonic Team for ya, always doing the most in the wrong direction. It's still a relatively fun experience, but nothing out of this world. I know some people actually prefer this one over Riders, so maybe it's got a place in some people's library. Coming in at number 11 is the Mario & Sonic 2014 Winter Olympic Games with a Metacritic score of 55. A lot of critics criticize the controls of the game, as they actually cause the experience to be harder to just pick up and play. The latest installment of Mario & Sonic series just feels sloppy instead of the HD reboot it should have been. It's way too similar to the previous games, and they clearly hadn't have a single clue how to utilize the Wii U gamepad for the events. Game Reactor Sweden, 4 out of 10. Mario & Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games has some of the best online capabilities on the Wii U, but it unwisely forces use of poor motion controls in almost every mode. IGN, 4.5 out of 10. The Dirt Olympic Games of Mario & Sonic is the worst one yet. It offers very few events worth playing and manages to be a party game that doesn't feel easy to pick up. On top of that, you need an entire arsenal of different controls to even play it. Level 7.NU, 3 out of 10. Some critics still found the game fun despite its controls. Mario & Sonic at its Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games isn't all that bad, but it's not great either. The controls for a lot of the events are iffy at best, but there are events that are still enjoyable, especially the dream events. This is one where I check out the demo or rent it first to see if you like it before plunking down $50 for it. Gaming Nexus, 7 out of 10. Mario & Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games is exactly what it says it is, an Olympics game of Mario & Sonic. While it is fun, it doesn't necessarily do anything past entries didn't do. That's not necessarily a bad thing though, because overall it is a fun formula, despite some of its flaws. Nintendo World Report, 7 out of 10. The updated visuals and online functionality are welcome improvements, but if you've already spent hours nailing high scores and load times 4 years ago, the events haven't changed drastically enough to warrant 2 purchases. Cheat Code Central, 7 out of 10. I mean, it's a Mario & Sonic Olympics game. games, so there's not much we should expect from these at this point. But this one is especially because a lot of these games try too hard to incorporate every controller the Wii U offers, that you even have some minigames that require you to switch between the gamepad and the Wii remote, which is extremely lame and inconvenient. For minigames that typically don't even last more than a couple minutes, this is way too much complexity to put into them. Party games rely on simplicity and a pick up and play nature to them to be successful, and this game is a huge flop at that. It's got its moments, and I appreciate a large variety of dream events in particular, but it definitely needed an overhaul in its controls. At number 10, we've got the weird party adaptation Sonic Shuffle with a Metacritic score of 54 based on 21 reviews. Critics were insistent on the comparisons to Mario Party, but they also immediately slammed the game for all its changes they deem as inferior to that series. If the design document for Sonic Shuffle contained anything more than the sentence, "Make a clone of Mario Party but with Sonic characters," I'll be very much surprised. But Sega HQ left out all the important instruction of, make sure you don't leave out all the good bits. Spank 3 out of 10. Almost everything that Mario Party did right, Sonic Shuffle does wrong, and to add insult to injury, it expects you to sit through repeated lengthy load sessions to get to the next sequence of absolute unfun. Game fan 4.2 out of 10. Everything that can make a board game less enjoyable is done here, and I'm talking about load times up to the wazoo, complex instructions, and too many options that would bewilder most players, especially during a multiplayer game. IGN 4.7 out of 10. Other critics received the changes more positively, although still found there could be some improvements made. With a lot of creativity, Sonic Team has taken the board game to the digital age and made a fun, sometimes frustrating board game that has a lot more than throwing some dice and moving around a rectangle. Antagonist 8.2 out of 10. There are so many rules, combos, minigames, and quests that's easy to get more than a little confused, but the essence of the game is fun, and all the variation leaves tons of room for competition. Game Revolution 6.7 out of 10. Can be tedious in one player mode, but it's clearly intended for multiplayer fun. Although it's the only party game for Dreamcast, Sonic Shuffle deals a great hand for all to play. Game Pro 8 out of 10. I was really interested in trying out Sonic Shuffle. I have a soft spot for party games, and I thought Sonic Team did a respectable job with Secret Rings as party mode, but Sonic Shuffle definitely isn't the experience we're looking for. It looks very much like Mario Party on the surface, but there's all these different rules and additions to the formula that's hard to wrap your head around and make the game drag on a lot longer. Also, since minigames are so much less frequent here, the board is so much more luck-based than Mario Party, which is already stupidly luck-based, so it's honestly a crapshoot playing through the story mode, which I think is just a poor idea for any luck-based game in general. Also, presentation-wise, the game feels nothing like a Sonic game from its music to its storyline. It feels more like a parody of a Mario game, and it's such a shame since this came out during the Adventure era, so we could have been in for a great soundtrack and more urbanized setting compared to the Mario Party games. I hope Sega does try to handle the party spin-off again one day, but Shuffle definitely is not a good enough contender. Sonic Sword Adventure slashes in at number 9 with a Metacritic score of 54. This coming out during the era where every Sonic game practically had an odd gimmick attached to it, critics weren't impressed with the swordplay. The left to right weaving that gave Secret Rings old-fashioned zip has been jettisoned for narrow paths, funneling you from one fight to the next. Add on-rails kart rides and regular pauses to hand rings over to local villagers, and this becomes Sonic's most static adventure yet. Edge Magazine 3 out of 10. Insultingly easy, repetitive, unfunny, strange, shallower than it thinks it is, and certain to sell loads simply because it's got Sonic on it and it's advertised on TV. If you care about what you play, don't play this. Kikizo 4 out of 10. Control issues prevent any true sensation of a classic Sonic title from emerging, while any subtle dev is virtually eradicated by the overwhelming sense of simplicity. Total video games 4 out of 10. Other critics found other aspects of the game to enjoy, like the story and presentation. In spite of its faults, there's a lot to like about Sonic and the Black Knight, provided you're not holding a candle for games long since past. Sonic's trademark speed is still there, and while the level designs are simpler than they were in the past, there's still enough fun packed in here to be worth at least a weekend of your time. Game Focus 7.3 out of 10. Mindlessly shaking the remote gets old and the easy missions pose little challenge, but the storybook presentation, well-animated cutscenes, and wealth of hidden items makes Sonic and the Black Knight worth a rental. Game Daily 7 out of 10. Summarizing, the game has a beautiful scenario and a great soundtrack, but when you control it, you'll miss the lack of precision and will see how weak the story is, with its short duration showing it's mediocre and a step back comparing to Unleashed. Switch Brazil 6.5 out of 10. I'll admit, I wasn't always a fan of Sonic and the Black Knight. When I first picked it up, it literally flew by me in a flash as the campaign is only a few hours long, and it felt exceptionally simplistic compared to most Sonic games. But it's got solid enough gameplay, and the swordplay is implemented in the best way it probably could have given you're attaching it to Sonic the Hedgehog. but the game's true shining moment comes in its presentation. The story is simple yet invoking. The game looks great with its medieval themes, and the soundtrack, oh my gosh, it's basically a middle-aged flavored Sonic Adventure 2 and I am in love with it. I don't really care to see the swordplay return, but I'd love to see a TV adaptation of this game or something. There was just something so cool about seeing Knuckles, Shadow, and Blaze as Knights of the Round Table to the tunes of Jun Sen-yu. This is probably the most shocking entry here, but coming in at number 8 is Sonic Adventure itself with a Metacritic score of 51.67. Now you might be thinking, wasn't this game exceptionally praised when it first came out? And well, yeah, it was. But Metacritic doesn't actually have a score for the Dreamcast version. It might have just come out right before Metacritic was active. So this score is an average of the DX version and the Xbox 360 and PS3 ports. Now this is making some sense. Or not, depending on whether you're a fanatic when it comes to this one. A lot of critics panned the game for a lot of issues that seems to be more apparent as the years pass. There's almost nothing to like about Sonic Adventure. It's clunky and awkward at best, painfully buggy and broken at worst. Its most unforgivable sin though is that it's just not fun. GameShark 3.3 out of 10. Sonic Adventure did not age well at all. The camera is frustrating, the voiceovers are very weak. People who are looking for nostalgia could buy this game, but even they should wait for Sonic Colors to come out. XGN 4 out of 10. Sonic Adventure doesn't just make you realize its age, it also makes you question the world we live in. Just how did this ever become the most successful Dreamcast game? Video Gamer 5 out of 10. Other critics still acknowledge it's a great game, even if it hasn't aged in the best way. Sonic Adventure is still a great game like it was back in the late 90s when it was on Dreamcast, but nothing has changed at all with this Xbox Live port. All the flaws still remain. Gamers Tempo 7 out of 10. This is a great game for the fanatics who like having all their Sonic games on the next generation console. However, if you're a casual fan looking for a masterpiece, all you'll find is a relic that was once considered greatness. It honestly pains me to say that. Destructoid 6 out of 10. Sonic Adventure is still a loved title among some hardcore Dreamcast enthusiasts, but those may be the only people who need to pick up this title without any reservations. Worth playing 6 out of 10. Reading these reviews gives me such mixed feelings because while the game certainly has aged since its release, why do I feel like this game gets so much more flack for that compared to its counterparts? I've been playing Mario 64 for instance, and while it's a great game, it could use a better camera and some other polishing efforts. I just feel like Sonic Adventure was held to a much higher standard simply because of where Sonic was during the era. You can't deny that due to Sonic's rocky 2000s, all of his games are being looked at in a more cynical lens. But Sonic Adventure's reviews have to be one of the most brutal examples of that. I personally enjoy Sonic Adventure. It's not a perfect game, but it's got so many great moments to help it stand on its own. If anything, I'd love for Sega to revisit this formula and actually make a game that polishes up everything that aged. But it's Sega, so I'ma head out. Ah yes, the badass himself, Shadow the Hedgehog, enters the list at number 7 with a Metacritic score of 48.33. This being really the first instance of Sonic's downfall, critics were definitely not pleased with the complete shift in direction. Combine the relatively poor visuals and monotonous level designs, and you'll find yourself in the middle of a level with no real visual cues of where you are within the level. Gaming age 2.5 out of 10. That is nothing like any Sonic game I played as a kid. Those games were fast, colorful, simple, and fun. All things that Shadow the Hedgehog not only misses, but flat out ignores. Nintendo World Report 3.5 out of 10. From its stripping down of the series' most successful gameplay elements to its obviously desperate addition of weapons and street cool, this is still a product of a development studio with a good imagination. But also, it seems, a lazy one only too happy to jump on the same GTA bandwagon that's currently carrying way too many developers. Thunderbolt 4 out of 10. Other critics still saw some classic Sonic elements shine through the game. At its worst, Shadow is a solid platformer with enough fun to keep hardcore Sonic fans in one place for a few days. At its best, it's an engaging gameplay experience that isn't jaded by otherwise glaring storyline related setbacks. Nintendo feels 7.5 out of 10. The choice of speed and rehashed gameplay are what dragged the game down. Shadow the Hedgehog is still a fun game for Sonic fans, but it's too average to be really interesting to casual gamers. Gamers Hell 6.7 out of 10. Shadow the Hedgehog has a couple good ideas that are ruined by sorry gameplay. What happened? Game Over Online 7 out of 10. I remember when Shadow the Hedgehog was first being promoted and released. I was oddly excited for it as a brand new Sonic fan, just because it seemed like something Sonic has never done before. Obviously the game has its flaws and it's definitely not a great experience. The gunplay was implemented pretty well, but the game gets bogged down by up and down level design and a confusing story arc. But I just have to say, I still have fun just popping in the game every now and then and just playing through the levels I enjoyed. I also think the concept of the choose your path story is still pretty cool, just not executed the best way. But I'd love to see Sonic Team attempt it again one day, maybe with a custom character you create, then it would feel truly genuine shifting between good and evil. But hey, at least Shadow gave us this gem.
Where's that damn fourth Chaos Emerald?
And number 6 is a pretty random title. It's Sonic the Fighters with a Metacritic score of 47. This is a situation quite like Sonic Adventure, as all these reviews came from the Xbox 360 and PS3 ports of the game, and there's only a measly 6 reviews contributing to the score. Nonetheless, critics were brutal in how the game's aged and practically held no value today. It's an interesting piece of Sega history, but not one that's aged particularly well. Official Xbox Magazine 5 out of 10. It's really hard to review these kind of games. They are well adapted, but there's little addition compared to the original versions. Only recommended for nostalgic gamers. Vando 5 out of 10. This game is a fossilized turd that never deserved to be excavated. X1 Magazine UK 2 out of 10. There was only one review that was somewhat positive. Sonic the Fighters may be simple and easy to play, but it's too obscure to ignore. The cheap price and overall strangeness of the title is good enough to warrant a purchase. Gaming age 8.3 out of 10. I mean, it's a port of an arcade fighting game. There's really not much more to say beyond that. You have your various melee and special attacks along with a block. It functions pretty well and it has a cute art style to it that matches almost no other Sonic game. Plus, it's got weird characters like Bark, Bean, and Knack in it. The only game to feature them as playable characters if I'm correct. I don't know, I'm not really a fan of these kind of games, so I feel like I'm not a great person to talk about whether it deserves to be here or not. I will say the difficulty curve from the second to third fighter in arcade mode seems pretty steep, as I couldn't beat Bark after like 5 tries. It may just be me, so take that with a grain of salt. But I mean, if you like fighting games in Sonic, check it out. There's lots of ways to play it after all, even in a Yakuza game. Wait, what? At number 5, we've got our first instance of Sonic Boom with Shattered Crystal, which has a Metacritic score of 47 based on 21 reviews. Critics were just not having this game. They weren't fond of gameplay or the game's dialogue. Another unspeakably bad platformer that, beyond its more general faults, seems to purposefully misunderstand the appeal of the entire Sonic franchise. Metro Game Central 2 out of 10. Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal ends up being a product that fails on the most basic design elements, perhaps due to lack of time, money, or just love for the franchise. Its pursuit of innovation and gameplay mechanics is commendable, but everything turns into a disaster by notorious negligence on the development side. Level up 3.8 out of 10. With a heaping helping of poorly written and unskippable cutscenes, Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal is a slog that never finds its footing. IGN 4 out of 10. Other critics found the game to be interesting enough with some solid platforming. Shattered Crystal isn't your typical Sonic game. Instead, it's a competent maze-based platform game that you'll probably enjoy. IGN Italia 7 out of 10. Interesting, funny, and clever. Not the best Sonic game ever made, but it's definitely better than the Sonic Boom's Wii U version. If you need blue speed this year, this is your game. 3D Juegos 7 out of 10. Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal is bogged down by slow, repetitive exploration, but there are moments of great, fast platforming that call back to Sonic's heyday. Arcade Sushi 6 out of 10. Shattered Crystal is a very frustrating game to me. This is because it's actually a pretty decent game on the surface. It's no Sonic Rush, but the 2D platforming here is simple and works well. I genuinely had a good time exploring the levels and getting to the end. The levels just tend to last a little too long. They also have so many different directions you can go in, but that was also part of the fun in a way, going down a certain path and seeing where it takes you. But where the game really lost me is through its progression system. To get to the next level, you need to collect these blue things, which you typically get by just finishing a level, but then you get to a point where you need to go back to the old levels and complete side objectives to get more of them to progress. These side objectives consist of collecting certain items, which is a complete nightmare to do in an open 2D level. Backtracking is pretty much impossible and you basically have to play the levels multiple times just to get all the items required to progress. Ugh, this game was so close, but this is even worse than the Metal System on Unleashed. But oh well. At least it has some funny lines from Styx talking about universal healthcare. Completing the trilogy for the most tragic racing series in the history of mankind, Sonic Free Riders ushers in at number 4 with a Metacritic score of 47. Critics were absolutely brutal towards the game's mechanics, outright saying they didn't work. The worst defect a video game can have is to be so poorly designed and or implemented that it becomes unplayable, which is the case of Sonic Free Riders, a perfect example of an opportunistic product, a rehash of an older title repackaged to take advantage of the Kinect's launch window. Movement caption is poor, the environments are confusing, the menu is probably out of work of the devil himself. To sum it up, this surfing experience was more of a nightmare than a dream we'd all love to play thanks to Back to Future 2. Gameblog.fr 2 out of 10. The good Kinect games can be really entertaining. The bad ones when the motion controls doesn't work like intended is horrible. Sonic Free Riders falls in the later category and is a completely broken game. Really, avoid at any cost. Game Reactor Sweden 3 out of 10. If it's not clear by now, I'm not recommending that anyone gets suckered into purchasing Sonic Free Riders. It's very clear that Sega did little QA on the final product before shipping it to meet the Kinect launch date, and the end product is an absolute mess. Video Game Talk 3 out of 10. Other reviewers thought the game may have had a strong learning curve, but that it was fun once those barriers were crossed over. Sonic Free Riders is certainly a hit, with some of the best Sonic-themed racing action since the Hedgehog grabbed his first hoverboard. The menu system is unnecessarily clunky and there is a bit of a learning curve to playing the game, but once you figure it all out, there is no end to the fun you and your family and friends will have playing this game. Game Chronicles 8.2 out of 10. The tracks are well designed, the level of board customization makes the game more robust than many racers, and the numerous multiplayer modes keep the game entertaining past the main missions. It's not amazing, but it's definitely one of the games you should get to round out your Connect collection. IGN 7.5 out of 10. Sonic fans will no doubt lap up the game and aim for the top marks in all tracks, although it's safe to say some patience and learning is a must. For Connect hungry gamers, there's something charming on offer, but you might not feel that right away as this is not the most pick up and play Connect game available. MS Xbox World 7.5 out of 10. I'd always been fascinated by Free Riders. On the surface, it looked like a return to form I desperately wanted for the series after Zero Gravity. Return of the air system, bright and zany next-gen graphics, a more humorous tone to stories similar to the first game, and on top of that, more characters were involved in the campaign that just seemed like a fun time. But of course, they just had to make it a Connect exclusive title, and so many fans saw the writing on the wall. I finally picked up this game early in the year to chat about in my Sonic Racing Games vid, and I was not impressed. The technology is just not good enough for the precise timing Riders requires to excel at it. Maybe if it was something like Mario Kart with more generic tracks, it could work. But a game with as complex mechanics as Riders, even with how they simplified the title, this game just flat out doesn't work. It's pretty at least, so here's to hoping one day we get a next gen port of the game without the Connect, please and thank you. Well, I think we all know this game is going to make its way onto the list eventually. Right at number 3 is the infamous Sonic 06 with a Metacritic score of 45.5. At least it's not on the very top, am I right? Reliving that beautiful year, critics were just flabbergasted by the game's sheer potential and hype crashing down upon release due to its unpolished nature. What should have been a dramatic return to form for Sonic, as signaled by the hugely promising trailer videos from earlier this year and the bold decision to use original Sonic the Hedgehog name, has turned out to be an absolute mess. Eurogamer 2 out of 10. This is an absolutely diabolical game. A bloated, leaden, enjoyment-free shambles which Sonic teams should be ashamed to have their name on, and you should under no circumstances part with any money for. The only way it could have been any worse is if a representative from Sega had put an actual dead hedgehog in every box. Gamers Europe 2.5 out of 10. Sega's decision to rush one of its most beloved franchises to the next gen market has ended in a broken product that does not even deserve a rento. Gaming age is 0 out of 10. Other critics brought more into the hype and found aspects of the game that were enjoyable. You simply can't ask for more out of an action game. Mission accomplished. Sonic is born anew. Play Magazine 8.5 out of 10. While it may please hardcore fans of the series of its addicting time-based action segments, it will surely alienate everyone else thanks to the abundance of non-Sonic elements, RPG town wandering, additional less enjoyable characters, and a god-awful camera. Deco 6 out of 10. In the end, Sonic nuts will love it. Everyone else should stay away. Game Informer 6.8 out of 10. I'm sure everyone has heard everything there is to hear about this game across not only YouTube, but the entire internet stratosphere. I even talked about in my own retrospective of the 3D Sonic Adventure style titles if you wanted to check that out. But to sum it up with a bruised cherry on top, Sonic 06 is a game that shows so many vitals of a fully breathing adventure that could have transformed this franchise in a way we can't even imagine. But its performance no doubt has had an insurmountable impact on the company we see caring for this franchise today. It's a game I enjoy many aspects of and have come to appreciate more than I used to. It's not perfect by all means, but the ambition and direction behind it could have led to something truly breathtaking. On a more positive note, a fan by the name of Chaos X is currently in the process of creating a definitive version of 06 that has all the game's content except, well, the game being fun and playable. This project has no doubt shown what 06 could have been with a little more time and care. It makes me hope Sega doesn't shy away from an idea like this forever, as 06 could have truly been a great moment if handled right. But if Frontiers is anything to go by, it looks like Sega is ready to try it again, and we can only hope the results aren't nearly as disastrous. Well, the only games that could place above 06 on this list are games that legit have no saving grace, and Sonic Genesis on the GBA certainly fills that criteria with a Metacritic score of 33. As if Sonic's 15th birthday bash couldn't be more of a disaster, this port of a beloved classic left many critics confused and distraught at how a simple port could have been botched so badly. To celebrate its 15th anniversary with such a lackluster product is upsetting to say the least. For shame, Sega. This doddering version of Sonic the Hedgehog has an appointment with the glue factory for sure. GameSpy 3 out of 10. There are a few minor twists in the anniversary mode, such as the ability to use a spin dash that was introduced later in the series, but none of it matters when the fundamentals are so thoroughly screwed. Play Magazine 4 out of 10. A piece of garbage port of a 15-year-old Sega Genesis game with only a battery save and a new spin dash move to spruce it up. That's about it. Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis is a travesty of a game that can't even get up to running speed. Modojo 2 out of 10. Only one critic found any semblance of an advantage in this version. Considering that Sonic Mega Collection for the GameCube already boasts a perfect version of the original Sonic, this game is a bit of a tough sell, but at least the inclusion of the Hog's trademark spin dash adds some appeal. Nintendo Power 6 out of 10. I mean, everyone is aware of how much of a disaster this port was. From choppy frame rate, zooming in way too close to Sonic, and complete up physics, this is a port of a beloved classic that was probably worked on for just a month or so before release. It's a shame because Sega had ported this game numerous times beforehand with no hiccups, so it was shocking to see it in this state, to say the least. The remixes of all the music was also not great. I mean, I understand the GBA is not as powerful, so you can't port the tracks directly onto it, but it made it seem like you were playing an At Games version of the title with the music, and it just doesn't sound good. Thankfully, Sega released many more ports afterwards that were much better, including the newly added spin dash option. So this game can just be a tragic relic of the past. Well, alright then. What Sonic game takes the title as the most critically panned game of all time in the series? Well, it's none other than Sonic Boom Rise of the Lyric, which straps in at the top spot with a Metacritic score of 32. This game was just massively bashed for practically everything about it, from game design to its conceptualizations. Somewhere along the line, Sega lost sight of what makes the series work. Sonic Boom Rise of the Lyric has a laundry list of problems, and not just problems inherent to the modern Sonic franchise, but failings of basic design. GameSpot 2 out of 10. One thing I'm sure of is that Sega ought to be embarrassed for pouring so much hype, so much marketing money into this project, only to have a sad, miserable little dog's dinner of a product to show for it. I guess it doesn't matter though, it's an idiotic baby's game for children and it exists to sell toys. It also thinks you're all dumb and it wears its content for you on its sleeve, a sleeve covered in bandages. The Gymquisition 2 out of 10. Oh, that's terribly bad, from the beginning to the very end. Sonic Boom Rise of the Lyric is such a shameful adaptation that we can only wonder how someone agreed to sell it. Oh Sonic, poor baby, they let you down, didn't they? Drew Act 2, 1.5 out of 10. Other critics appreciate the ideas the game presented, but still weren't fond of the game itself. It's not deserving of some of the vitriol it's received, as it's not the worst game ever, but it's just so painfully average in so many ways that may actually be worse by not being a worse game. Game Over Online 5.5 out of 10. It's admirable that Sonic Boom Rise of the Lyric tries so many new things, but every path it follows is a dead end. Hardcore Gamer 5 out of 10. Sonic Boom Rise of the Lyric is too slow paced, too easy, and too childish for teen or adult Sonic fans, and its control and design issues make it difficult to recommend even for its target audience. Games Radar Plus 5 out of 10. It's no surprise Rise of the Lyric is here, as it is often touted as one of the worst Sonic games of all time. Playing the game myself for the first time this past year, I admit I wasn't really getting what was downright awful about it. I think the game itself works somewhat well even with its numerous choppy moments, but it's not broken, and the game does what it sets out to do. Where the issue arises is that the game is not only mismatched with the Sonic franchise, but it's just a really average game on its own. There's just nothing that's practically fun about this one. The platforming feels linear and lifeless, and the speed sections are just a poor man's version of Mach Speed's portions of 06. The game honestly feels like it should have been a Jak and Daxter game, or Ratchet & Clank, or some other platformer that excels in exploration type of adventures. This game just isn't fun, which is why unlike 06, you'll see very few people defending this one. It's at least got a solid presentation though, and the voice actors do a good job transferring the show's atmosphere to this game. So while some of these games are definitely nowhere near good representations of Sonic, some of these titles are actually debatably favorites within the community. Sonic Unleashed and Sonic Adventure are some titles that come to mind, but the critics had some pretty good reasons to not like these titles at the same time. I guess it begs the question, what actually factors into these games being on this list besides, well, not functioning? Because games like Sonic Genesis certainly earned their spot on this list due to missing those exact necessities. Some of these games may be classified as misunderstood, but they certainly don't make it easy to understand them, like the Riders games. I guess when all is said and done, while most of these games are on here for legitimate reasons, many of these games have their die-hard fans that will go to bat for them for their positive qualities. And I think that's really cool in a way, because it shows that train wrecks like Sonic 06 can still have their fans, and shows that a game's potential can still shine through despite some negative qualities because of how big of fans we are of Sonic. Of course, Sega should do everything they can to make sure there are no more games that get on this list, because that would be most desirable, but I guess they can rest easy knowing that most of these games will have their own fans. Except Sonic Genesis, seriously, what fumes were going into that room when they were making that? Yo bro, this game sucks ass. Pfft, hell yeah, we'll make it into a hot though. Starting with zooming in that Porcupine's beach bod, he be hitting them gangs, yo. And dude, this makes me dizzy. We gotta slow it down and chill out. And now we just add this fertilizer to make it big and strong. Ah, dude, we gonna get that promo. Whoa! Thank you so much for watching this video. Special shout out to my patrons, New Gamer Hub, Team Rattle Sign Gamer, Trash Q, Claw84. These are my patrons / YouTube members. If you'd like to become a patron or YouTube member, get access to a whole bunch of different perks, and please check out the links in the description box below. But alright, this is Riders, riding out.